can do. I love to tell a story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story, still pleasant to repeat. What on each time I'll tell it, more wonderfully sweet. I love to tell the story, for some I've never heard the message of salvation from God only word. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Last one. I love to tell a story for those who know it's best. Seems hungry and thirsty to hear it like the rest. And when the scene of glory, I sing the new song. 'Twill be the old story that I have loved so long. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Amen.
Amen.
We are sorry for the delay this morning, but I think it's some misunderstanding concerning the timing. But we are happy to have Elder Wilson and his son here who will be giving us a Sabbath school lesson at this time. Amen.
All right. Hope you have a good, a happy Sabbath and a good morning. A little late, but that's okay. We're gonna get set up, and I'll get started today, and I'll take over from my dad. So. Just give me 15 minutes, probably.
Before we get started, I just wanted, this is my son, his name is Zebulun. His mother and myself, we asked God for this young man, and that God gave him to us in my old age. I had my Abraham experience. My wife wasn't a young chicken either. She was about 39. So, but anyway, God gave him to us to replace me. And so this is not the end of me. And when he was 12 years old, he told me God called him to be a medical missionary physician. And he was baptized, and ever since then, I have not seen him step back. I mean, his mother really put it in him. She studied with him. She prayed with him. She made sure that she raised him to serve the Lord. And so he travels with me all over the world. And I try to inspire young people that they can do this work. And you don't have to wait till you get old and done everything. You can do it in your youth. That's what God wants. So Zebulun going to present to you. And I take him slow. I don't really overwhelm him. I let him do it at his pace because I don't want to take his youthhood from him. But at the same time, I want to introduce him to the work so that when the day comes, he's ready to take over. He already had a pathway open for him.
It's still loaded up. Sure. Okay, give me a couple more minutes, and we'll be ready. Okay. All right. I got everything set up. Let's just have a word of prayer and we'll get started. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you this morning, let us have a blessed Sabbath that we might be able to glorify you and understand our bodies and more about your word. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so our topic today is diabetes. Diabetes, treatments and formulas. And the official name is diabetes, the sweet killer, or to defeat the sweet killer. So that's our goal. But first we're going to have to learn what diabetes is. This is real short notice for me, but I'm going to get everything together, so, just bear with me. And, yeah, hopefully we can both learn something today. So, first, we have our key players. So these are going to be like the basics. So when we go forward, you'll understand what everything is. Glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar. Glucose is the most abundant monosaccharide, subcategory of carbohydrates. Glucose is mainly made by plants and most algae during photosynthesis from water and carbon dioxide, using energy from sunlight. Basically, it's just sugar. So if you eat a candy bar right now, you're eating glucose. It's just what its makeup is made of from. It's what sugar is made from. It's what sugar is, really. A cell. The cell, from the Latin small room, is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all known living organisms. A cell is the smallest unit of life. Cells are often called the building blocks of life. The study of cells is called cell biology. So we're all made from cells. We're all made from different little tiny organisms that make a whole body. So, yeah. Okay, an antibody. An antibody, also known as an immunoglobulin, is a large, Y-shaped protein produced mainly by plasma cells that are used by the immune system to neutralize pathogens such as bacteria and viruses. Now, have you ever heard of a white blood cell? Anyone's heard? Yeah, okay, so you've heard of white blood cell. So antibodies and white blood cells work together in stopping viruses and bacteria. That's their job. But as we'll see, if they can mismalfunction, and a problem can happen. So, insulin, a hormone produced in the pancreas by the islets of Langerhans, which regulates the amount of glucose in the blood. The lack of insulin causes a form of diabetes. And so this one is going to be one of the main players, insulin and glucose, and those antibodies as well. Now, we see that they're produced in something called the islets of Langerhans. And it's like a cluster of proteins in your pancreas. And it produces these insulin, as we'll see. First things first, what is diabetes? Diabetes mellitus, sometimes called sugar diabetes, is a condition that occurs when the body can't use glucose normally. Now, what's glucose? Sugar. Okay, so we get that down. Glucose is the main source of energy for the body's cells. The level of glucose in the blood are controlled by a hormone called insulin, which is made by the pancreas. Insulin helps glucose enter the cells. And we'll come back over that. When someone has diabetes, the pancreas does not make enough insulin, type 1 diabetes, or the body can't respond normally to the insulin that is made, type 2 diabetes. This causes glucose levels in the blood to rise, leading to symptoms such as increased urination, extreme thirst, and unexplained weight loss. So the body is not able to absorb the glucose, and so it just stays in the blood. And we'll come back to that. Type 1 diabetes was also called insulin-dependent diabetes, or IDDM, or juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas undergoes an autoimmune attack by the body itself and is rendered incapable of making insulin in persons with type 1 diabetes. So, if you have type 1 diabetes, the body is attacking itself. So we talked about the antibodies. Well, they'll malfunction for some reason, as we'll find out why later. And they'll attack your pancreas, which will damage those islets of Langerhans, so you won't be able to make any more insulin, or you won't be able to make enough insulin. The beta cells of the pancreas, which are responsible for insulin production, are attacked by the misdirected immune system. It is believed that the tendency to develop abnormal antibodies in type 1 diabetes is in part genetically inherited, though the details are not fully understood. We're going to try to uncover some of those details. So this is basically what happens in a cartoon way. So we have these antibodies here. They attack these islets of Langerhans, and your beta cells are damaged. So you don't have a lot of the beta cells, or you don't have any, sometimes none, but usually you'll have a little bit left. But you're not able to produce as much insulin anymore. So that gives us to type 2 diabetes. What's the difference? This subgroup is referred to as latent autoimmune disease in adults. Autoimmune disease in adults. LDA is a slow progressive form of type 1 diabetes. So this is slower than type 1. It's something that you might not know you have until much later. But it does creep up on you, and it comes from bad choices, as you can see. Of all the patients with diabetes, only approximately 10% have type 1 diabetes, and the remaining 90% have type 2. So usually more of us are going to have type 2 because of our bad choices. So yeah. So this is what happens in a normal system. This is what's supposed to happen. We have our insulin, we have the glucose, and we have the receptors. So the insulin goes into the receptors. Let's say a hole opens up. Glucose goes into the cells. You feel energized. You're all good now. You know, it's good. That's what's supposed to happen. But if you have type 1 diabetes, you don't have any insulin, or you don't have a lot of insulin. And so when glucose tries to go into the cells, it can't. And it goes off into the bloodstream. And that's going to cause those symptoms that we'll talk about. So it can't get in. And if you have type 2 diabetes, something similar happens, but this time the receptors aren't blocked or damaged from something, fat or protein or something like that. And glucose can't enter the cells, can't enter the receptor, and that means glucose can't enter the cells because the receptors are damaged, so the insulin isn't able to work. So now your body's going to create a lot of extra insulin just to try to compensate because it's maybe one of the receptors works properly, but that's going to eventually damage your pancreas. So that's also not good. Something else we have to look at is prediabetes. Prediabetes means you have a blood glucose or blood sugar levels that are higher than normal but not high enough to be called diabetes. Glucose comes from the foods you eat. Too much glucose in your blood can damage your body over time. If you have prediabetes, you're more likely to develop type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Most people with prediabetes don't have any symptoms. Your doctor could use a A1C test or another blood test to find out if your blood glucose levels are higher than normal. If you are 55 years or older, your doctor may recommend that you be tested for prediabetes, especially if you're overweight. So this one is the middle ground between diabetes and not diabetes. So basically, this is something you won't know you have, but it's going to be there, and this is why we really have to really look at ourselves and see what the habits and the things we do, because we could be coming down with something later on. Losing weight, losing at least 5 to 10% of your starting weight can prevent or delay diabetes or even reverse prediabetes. That's 10 to 20 pounds for someone who weighs 200 pounds. You can lose weight by cutting down on the amount of calories and fat you eat and being physically active at least 30 minutes a day. Being physically active makes your body insulin work better. Your doctor may also prescribe medicine to control the amount of glucose in your blood. Hopefully we can skip that one, but that depends on our choices. Something else is an A1C test. The A1C test is a common blood test used to diagnose type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and then gauge how well you're managing your diabetes. The A1C test goes by many other names, including glycated hemoglobin, glycolated hemoglobin, hemoglobin A1C, and HbA1c. The test will result your average blood levels for the past 2 or 3 months. Specifically, the A1C test measures the percentage of your hemoglobin, a protein in the blood cells that carries oxygen, is coated with sugar, or glycated. The higher your A1C levels, the poorer your blood sugar control and the higher risk of it's blocked out, but the higher risk of you getting diabetes. So basically what an A1C test is, you go into the doctor and he's gonna gauge it like each month of what your blood sugar level is staying at. So we have like this chart. If it's like from 5.7 and down, then it's normal. But if you go in 3 months and you've checked it on a constant basis and it's staying in between 5.7 to 6.5, then something's up because it's not supposed to stay that high. So that means you might have prediabetes. If it's from 6.5 and higher, then that means something's really happening and you probably are getting type 2 diabetes or have diabetes. So Yeah, you gauge it from a period of time to see where it's staying at. Is it staying in a higher or is it staying lower, basically? So signs and symptoms. So now we'll see the symptoms of diabetes. Wait a minute. There we go. Okay. One sec.
Early diagnosis and treatment of diabetes can have a profound
There we go. Or not. Okay. Don't know what that is. One second.
Early diagnosis and treatment of diabetes can have a profound impact on your long-term health. Just a 3-year delay in diagnosis increases your relative risk of heart disease by 29%. Therefore, by knowing what to look for, you can take control of the situation before it takes control of you.
And everyone could hear, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for the record, the signs or symptoms of high blood sugar are typically the same for both children and adults. Now, patients with type 1 diabetes usually develop the symptoms over like a sudden, short period of time. The condition is often diagnosed in an emergency setting. Now, type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, progresses quite slowly. Symptoms tend to come on gradually, which is why they're often missed. So some don't even experience any early symptoms at all, but most do. Okay, number 1 is excessive urination. So as a point of reference, most people pee 4 to 7 times in a 24-hour period. So if you're going much more than that, it could be a red flag. Also, if you're getting went right before you went to sleep, and you don't normally wake up during the night to do this, then this is a big. Kidneys are working overtime to expel the excess sugar in your blood, and sugar that cannot be absorbed into the blood must be absorbed from the blood, so it must be urinated out. So excess sugar in your blood equals more urination. Okay, excessive thirst is another glaring symptom. So drinking constantly throughout the day and even overnight. So it could be something like 4 litres or more per day, which is equivalent of a gallon. And this basically happens because of the excessive urination cycle. So the more you pee, the more you want to drink, and the more you drink, the more you need to pee. Those with diabetes can have what seems to be an insatiable appetite. So even though you might have just eaten, it feels like you haven't eaten a thing. Now, why does this happen? Well, diabetics have lost much of their ability to self-regulate blood sugar, so this leads to a significant fluctuation in blood sugar levels. Now, when these levels plummet, the brain thinks it's starving and craves more sugar and more calories, and that's why you're always feeling hungry. So number 4 is rapid or unintentional weight loss. Now, this is not a good weight loss. It can be anywhere like between 5 to 10 kilos, or I think it's 11 to 22 pounds in a matter of a week or a month. This is much more common in type 1 diabetics though, when your glucose metabolism can shut down really fast. Now, so why does this happen? So without new energy coming into the cells, the body is tricked into thinking you're in a sort of starvation. So in order to provide energy, the body responds by breaking down protein in the muscle, and this leads to muscle deterioration, and which accounts for almost all of that weight loss. So unmanaged diabetes is going to leave you feeling very lousy and lazy, like extremely lazy and fatigued to the point where you can't do your regular daily activities. So this happens because with all the sugar remaining in the blood, it doesn't get absorbed into the cells for energy. So you literally have less energy. So the body's also expending more energy to try and filter out that excess sugar. Kidneys are in overdrive. You're probably sleeping poorly, and your blood sugar levels are going up and down when you eat. So this is all starting to take its toll, and that's why you're feeling really, really lethargic. So a tingling or numbing sensation in the body's extremities, like your hands and feet, toes and fingers, is actually a really common sign of high blood sugar or unmanaged diabetes. Now, it generally happens in the morning after you've woken up, even if you haven't been sleeping uncomfortably or sleeping on your arm or something, or on your leg, you still feel that tingling, or it can even be a burning sensation. Now, this happens because the sugar that lingers in the blood for a long period of time starts to damage the nerves and your nerve endings. And nerves that are furthest from the heart, they are not well repaired because you've got circulation problems, and they're the furthest point. So that is your toes and your fingers, and that's why you'll get that tingling or burning sensation there. So distorted or blurry vision, or commonly seeing high floaters, is a common sign of high blood sugar as well. And this happens because excess sugar in the blood is pulling fluid out of the cells and tissue, and this includes your lens in the eye, which can swell and alter its ability to focus. Fortunately, this is largely reversible once you treat your blood sugar levels. Overly itchy or irritated skin can be a sign of high blood sugar, and you can even get dark skin around your neck here and armpits. Now, this dry skin can be the result of poor circulation and or excessive fluid loss from urinating too much. The darkening skin is to do with a hormonal change, namely insulin resistance. So the last early sign of diabetes is cuts and wounds that just don't heal or heal very slowly. So it's not uncommon for someone to get even a leg bruise or a cut on your foot or something that just won't close up. It's really common in the extremities where the circulation is the least strong. So this goes hand in hand with the numbness and tingling that I spoke about before. So this happens because the sugar that's in the bloodstream starts to damage the arteries and veins, and that affects circulation. So the blood is required to facilitate healing. So with limited circulation, a wound or bruise will be very slow to heal because there's just less blood going there. So the lower down the cut, it tends to be the slower the healing process. Early warning signs of diabetes, like I mentioned at the start, the symptoms between adults and children tend to be quite similar. So if you are experiencing any of these warning signs, then go and get your blood sugar levels tested with your medical practitioner.
So, before anyone here thinks, oh, I have diabetes, because you might be experiencing some of these symptoms, we're going to have to later on see exactly what you're doing. Because if you're doing any of these habits or you're doing these things, maybe you do. You very well could, but we're all going to have to examine ourselves. Sweet tooth, bitter truth. Diabetes is the most common serious metabolic disease of humans, and it's a chronic disorder of carbohydrates and fat and protein metabolism. Diabetes is now a disease that affects 371 million people worldwide, and 807 million of them do not even know they have the disease, according to the International Diabetes Federation. Let's look closer. 1 million people in the United States have diabetes, but 8.1 million may be undiagnosed and unaware of their condition. About 1.4 million new cases of diabetes are diagnosed in the United States every year. So this is one that makes you think. More than 1 in every 10 adults who are 20 years old or older has diabetes. So it's about 20 people here. So that means, you need to be looking and thinking about these things and evaluating your choices because, something could happen. The estimate would put diabetes behind heart disease and cancer, which account for about 23% and 22% of U.S. deaths, respectively, as the third leading cause of death. Currently, CDC data, and this is the updated data, shows chronic respiratory disease as the third leading cause, accounting for about 5% of deaths. So before, diabetes was the third leading cause of death, but it got updated, and they say that respiratory problems are the third leading cause. So it took its place, but it's because of the same choices that cause something like those respiratory problems that cause diabetes: fat, grease, sugar, cheese, things like that. It's going to cause those same problems. So it's not very surprising. 15 years ago, type 2 diabetes in children was almost unheard of. Since then, as the number of cases have crept up, scientists have sought to figure out the best way to treat this type of diabetes in young people. A 2007 study in the Journal of a Medical Association is estimated there are about 370 new cases of type 2 diabetes a year among youth in the United States. The evidence suggests that type 2 behaves differently in children than in adults, an insight that may help doctors give kids with type 2 the best possible care. While it is said that type 2 occurs mostly in individuals over 30 years old and the incidence increases with age, we are seeing the alarming number of patients with type 2 diabetes who are barely in their teen years. In fact, for the first time in the history of humans, type 2 diabetes is now more common than type 1 diabetes in childhood. Most of these cases are a direct result of poor eating habits, higher body weight, and lack of exercise. So that's actually pretty messed up, especially if you see some of the more serious symptoms of diabetes. So let's look at a little bit of the chronic symptoms. Diabetic retinopathy, blindness. Diabetic neuropathy, nerve damage. Diabetic nephropathy, kidney failure. Diabetic foot ulcers, gangrene. Cardiovascular disease, heart, or shorter life. So we have blindness, nerve damage, kidney failure, which is the most serious, I believe, because once the kidneys fail, that's really it. Once it's completely failed. Gangrene, you can start losing toes and fingers and stuff. That's not something anybody, anyone shouldn't have to go through that in the first place, but specifically someone who's supposed to be a teenager. You don't want to have to lose a toe or finger. Doesn't sound very pleasant. Eye complications. The major eye complications of diabetes is called diabetic retinopathy. Diabetic retinopathy occurs in patients who have had diabetes for at least 5 years. Diseased small blood vessels in the back of the eye cause leakage of protein and blood in the retina. The disease of these blood vessels also cause the formation of small aneurysms or microaneurysms. And new but brittle blood vessels, neovascularization, spontaneous bleeding from the new and brittle blood vessels can lead to retinal scarring, retinal detachment, thus impairing vision. And you can see what that looks like. You could see the blood vessels, you have the brittle blood vessels, they burst and it just bleeds. And so you have like scarring and you also have like patches and you'll see like blotches in your vision. Cataracts and glaucoma are the most common among diabetics. It's important to note that since the lens of the eye lets water through, if the blood sugar concentrations vary a lot, the lens of the eye will shrink and swell with fluid accordingly. As a result, blurry vision is very common in poorly controlled diabetes. Patients are usually discouraged from getting a new eyeglass prescription until their blood sugar is controlled. This allows for more accurate assessment of what kind of glasses prescription is required. Kidney damage. As I said, this is the most serious symptom. Kidney damage from diabetes is called diabetic nephropathy. The onset of kidney disease, it is progressive and extremely variable. Initially, diseased small blood vessels in the kidneys cause leakage of protein in the urine. Later on, the kidneys lose their ability to cleanse and filter blood. The accumulation of toxic waste products in the blood leads to a need for dialysis. Dialysis involves using a machine that serves the function of the kidney by filtering and cleaning the blood. In patients who do not want to undergo chronic dialysis, kidney transplant may be considered. So the body is no longer able to filter the blood anymore because it's overworked, which is a serious thing. And so then you have to go into a machine called dialysis to basically compensate. In medicine, dialysis is the process of removing excess water solids and its toxins from the blood. Those whose native kidneys have lost the ability to perform these functions in a natural way. This is referred to as renal replacement therapy.
I'm sitting in the hospital and I'm 19 years old. I'm like, no, this is unreal. I had swollen legs, but it was in the summertime. And in my family, you don't go to the doctor unless blood is gushing from the side of your neck. And so my mother would just say, you know, it's the heat, and that's why you have swollen legs. But finally, it got to the point that it was getting really bad. And so when I went to the doctor, they gave me a biopsy. They took a little piece of the kidney to see what was wrong. I'm sitting in the hospital, and I'm 19 years old. I'm not going on dialysis. You know, I don't know why you're doing this. I've been doing it for 40 years now, come June.
It's like I'm in prison. It feels like I'm losing time. Every time, you know? A normal day, that's about it. You can't wait to leave, that's for sure. You hate when you sit down in the chair and you can't wait to get out of it. You want the clock to just go fast. Sometimes I do, I imagine the clock going fast, just to calm my nerves down.
Then you go through the stage of like just being angry, man, like at everybody. Don't look at me. Why? Because you're the nurse and you're not on dialysis and I am on dialysis and I don't like it, But it is a hard life in the beginning until you learn how to just modify your living, modify your life.
Okay.
So basically, you'll come into this dialysis center, you'll sit on this bed, lay down, and they'll stick some needles in you and take your blood out and filter it. And you have to do that maybe every couple days for maybe like, three days. Yeah, and it's like maybe 4 hours in there, like 3 or 4 hours just sitting in that chair. And you have to do that, and you can't travel unless you make an appointment with a dialysis center and wherever you're going. So your life is going to be basically centered around this disease, and that's not something anyone wants to do. That's not a life someone should have to live. So we're going to have to make changes now, so we don't have to look to that for the future. Nerve damage in diabetes is called diabetic neuropathy, and is also caused by diseased small blood vessels. In essence, the blood flow to the nerves is limited, leaving the nerves without blood flow, and they get damaged or die as a result, a term known as ischemia. Symptoms of diabetic nerve damage includes numbness, burning, and aching of the feet and lower extremities. Neuropathy, which is nerve damage that leads to loss of feeling. Without feeling in your feet, you may not notice your hurt foot, which may result in injury going untreated. Walking on an untreated injury is the most common cause of diabetic foot ulcers. Poor circulation in your lungs, your legs, and your feet can affect very small blood vessels that feed the skin. The lack of healthy blood flow may lead to skin repair, allowing the skin to break and not heal properly, resulting in a sore. Now, these are really nice photos. These are some nice photos. Just wait until my dad actually starts showing some of this stuff. I'm being really kind to you guys. I'm getting this really nice illustration that just, it's not that bad. But he's gonna actually show like real photos of people's toes and stuff falling off. So just prepare yourself for that. I'm being kind to you. You just get this really nice illustration. Nothing graphic, nothing too graphic. In 2010, 73,000 American adults who had diabetes and are over 20 had amputations. That may sound like a lot, but amputations account for only a small percentage of the 29 billion people in the United States with diabetes. So that's what they say. It's a lot, but compared to all the people in the United States, it's not that bad. But if you're one of those 73,000, then it is a big deal. But hey, it depends on your perspective. But again, this is why we had to make choices. Leviticus 17:11. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh an atonement for your souls. So the blood is life. If there's lack of blood or there's not a good quality of blood, there's going to begin to be death. diabetic ketoacidosis. This condition primarily occurs in type 1 diabetics and is progressive, can result in coma and death, frequent urination, severe thirst, severe fatigue, nausea, vomiting, and mental confusion. Okay, so we've talked a lot about that. Let's figure out, let's ascertain the cause. What causes this? So we get off the depressing stuff and move a little bit happier into what actually causes the problem. Didn't take very long. See, we could stop right there, but we're gonna go a little bit deeper. Starch. So we have these two different types of sugars here. We have starch, something like spaghetti, pasta, or processed sugar, something like a Coca-Cola or a Twix bar. Both of these can cause problems, but one is just gonna take your blood sugar up immediately and drop down. And that could be a problem, and that's the processed sugar. But both you gotta watch out for. Heavily processed carbohydrates. Heavily processed carbohydrates, such as those made with white flour, white rice, white sugar, are essentially whole foods stripped of important bran and fiber, as well as healthy vitamins and minerals. Calories devoid of nutrients with high sugar content are primary offenders, says Eliz. It's like a doctor. As much as possible, these foods should be eliminated because they are so easy to digest. These foods can spike in blood sugar level, insulin levels over time. This can lead to type 2 diabetes. So these foods are just air with some sugar and some water added to it and some oil. And so they're not something that we need to be eating, especially if we want to be healthy. But that brings another question. How much added sugar should we consume a day? So how much added sugar should we even be eating in the first place? Well, what she said was not that bad of advice, just none. But the reality is we're going to end up eating some. So how much should we? According to the American Heart Association, the maximum amount of added sugars you should eat in a day are 150 calories per day, or 37.5 grams, or 9 teaspoons. Women, 100 calories per day, 23 grams, or 6 teaspoons. But this is the updated information. They say for additional benefits, everybody should just stick with 6 teaspoons or 25 grams. So, go no further than 6 teaspoons, and you'll have additional benefits and you'll be healthy. Are we doing that? We're not doing that. If you've eaten anything for the store, you've already failed this like 1,000 times over. Like you failed. We've failed miserably. So let's actually look at some of that. So let's just look at some of these candies that maybe you eat. I don't know. It's not for me to know, but let's just in case you do. How much sugar do chocolates and candies contain? This is what they say. With a high sugar content, chocolate should always be viewed as an occasional treat. Now, this is your homework. Just get on Google, spell up chocolate, rat feces, rat hair, something like that. Just put something to that effect in there. Just see what you find. Just see what you're getting on there. You'll see if you want to go with the occasional treat thing. Now, that's on you. Now, Dove chocolate bar, 37 grams, 5 teaspoons of sugar. So that's basically already too much. We've already gotten to the point where 6 teaspoons is supposed to be the limit for additional benefits. You've already gone to 5. You can't eat any other sweet thing after this. That's it. No more, nothing else sweet for the entire day. Butterfinger bar, 60 grams, 6.9 teaspoons of sugar. Caramel piece, 10 grams, 1.7 teaspoons of sugar. Marshmallows, 100 grams, 14.5 teaspoons of sugar. Milky Way bar, 58 grams, 8.5 teaspoons of sugar. Milk chocolate bar, 44 grams, 5.75 teaspoons of sugar. Snickers bar, 57 grams, 5 teaspoons of sugar. Boiled sweets bag, 100 grams, 11.5 teaspoons of sugar. M&M's packet, 45 grams, 5.75 teaspoons of sugar. Twix bar, this is the lowest out of all of them. 2.75 teaspoons of sugar. That's not so bad. It's like 3 teaspoons compared to everything else. It's not too bad, but you're not going to eat one of these. You're going to probably eat another one or maybe something else sweet. So, you're still not going to get away with it. But hey, if you really want to, you could go with the Twix bar, I guess. Starburst packet, 45 grams, 5.5 teaspoons of sugar. Sweet drinks, 1 can, 7 teaspoons of sugar. That's already past the limit. Red Bull can, 1 can, 7.75 teaspoons of sugar. Lemonade, 1 glass, 5.5 teaspoons of sugar. Orange squash, 1 glass, 2.5 teaspoons of sugar. That one's the lowest. Hot chocolate, 1 mug, 4.5 teaspoons of sugar. Fruit smoothie, 1 glass, 3.5 teaspoons of sugar. So if you drink 1 Coca-Cola, it's over. And it's it. As we'll see, that this is even bigger than just added sugar. But you notice they have fruit smoothie on there. Now, this is talking about a added sugar fruit smoothie, but I want to talk about a little bit later about how we need to even be careful about fruit drinks in general, just any fruit drinks. So we'll come back to that. How much sugar do breakfast cereals contain? Fruit Loops is said to contain 106 times more sugar than shredded wheat. Frosted Flakes, 8.9 teaspoons of sugar. That's way past the limit. Honey Smacks, 14 teaspoons of sugar. That's like twice over the limit, so that's not gonna work. Coca-Cola, 14 teaspoons, 54 grams of sugar. Coca-Cola cherry flavor, 56 grams of sugar, 16 teaspoons. This one is, I think this is the light, is 34 grams of sugar, 6 teaspoons of sugar. It's not as bad as the other ones, but it's still past your limit. So if you drink any of these, you can't drink any other sweet thing like for the entire day, especially the last one, which is, at least 6 teaspoons. You can't drink anything else sweet. And you definitely can't have another one, which most people drink. They don't just drink 1 of these, they drink 2 of these or more, or something else sweet. So you're going way past the limit. Sugary beverages like soda, sweet teas, and lemonade are linked to increased risks of type 2 diabetes, says Jill Wiesenberger, MSRD, CDC, author of book Weight Loss Week by Week. Presumably because the excess calories lead to weight gain and because the sugar load may increase insulin resistance. According to a 2010 study in diabetes care, drinking 1 to 2 sugary drinks per day increased the risk of type 2 diabetes by 26%, compared with having less than 1 serving a month. One of the best ways to minimize the effects of sugar on your health is to limit your intake of sugar-sweetened beverages, including fruit drinks. To stay hydrated, drink more water. Also avoid loading up on coffee, tea with sugar and cream. So they mentioned fruit drinks. Well, let's look at that a little bit.
Sugar is a simple carbohydrate made of 2 molecules, glucose and fructose. This bond is cleaved in the gut before they're absorbed. It's been shown that glucose mainly drives fat storage under the skin, and fructose deposits fat around organs like the liver.
When you make extra liver fat, that liver fat ends up mucking up the workings of the liver, and you end up with a phenomenon called insulin resistance. The liver doesn't work right, so the pancreas has to make extra insulin. And it also causes hypertension, changes in the brain that might result in altered cognitive function and possibly even dementia. It can increase cell proliferation, which can cause cancer. It can cause vascular smooth muscle proliferation, which can cause heart disease.
Sugar can also accelerate aging.
When you paint your barbecued meat with barbecue sauce, it browns faster. Well, that's happening inside your body. It's known as the browning or the Maillard reaction. And it is the thing that causes cellular aging. And the reason you do it with fructose is because it browns better. This is the reason that fructose has been added to bread. It browns virtually all foods better. Well, it browns your insides better too. And as that happens, you are aging faster. If you had a glass of fruit juice this morning, you're aging 7 times quicker.
Fructose is mainly found in fruit. That's why they call it fruit sugar. Now, you might be thinking, how can it be bad for me if it's found in a health food? Well, let me explain. You could easily drink a glass of apple juice before dinner, but if you had to have the equivalent in whole fruit, you probably wouldn't finish your meal. You see, juicing fruit removes all the fibrous pulp, so you can take in a whole lot more calories without feeling as full. So if you're going to eat fruit, stick to whole fruit because it has a lot more fiber, and it's the fiber that tames your insulin response to sugar. chronically high levels of fructose is not only toxic to your liver, it messes with the hormones that control appetite.
There is a hormone in your stomach called ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. When your stomach is empty, ghrelin goes up, tells your brain, hey, time to eat. Then you eat, ghrelin goes down, and so hunger goes away. But when you consume sugar, fructose does not get registered by the brain as you having eaten. Ghrelin doesn't change. You stay hungry.
So sugar can affect a lot of things, but we even have to look at fruit drinks that we drink. You know, you take all the fiber out of something, and you just have this water. It's just sugar water, really. I mean, you wouldn't eat all that fruit. You wouldn't logically eat a lot of that, you know, an apple, 2 apples, a banana, some strawberries, a piece of mango. You know, after you ate all of that, you'd be done. That would be nothing. But you take all the fiber out of that, and you just have the water and the juice from that. It's no longer healthy. And you've spent it up and all that. It's really not healthy anymore if you take all the fiber out of it. It's just sugar. I mean, I'm not saying you can't drink fruit drinks ever, but you got to think that you have to be careful. Like, we're supposed to be having vegetable juices, not necessarily fruit drinks a lot. It's, you know, it tastes good, but it's not necessarily something healthy. And we have to think out of the box like that sometimes, that, you know, though this is fruit, I've taken all the things that make it good for me out of it. Now, something like a smoothie, that's better because it still has the fiber in it, but you still need to be careful with that still. But that would be a little bit better. But just fruit drink, it's not healthy anymore. And we just have to think about those things. Changes have to be made. For people with diabetes, it's important to limit sugars and fats found in junk food. This helps keep your weight and blood sugar levels under control. The ADA recommends limiting these foods because they usually take the place of other more nutritious foods in your body. It can be hard to break a junk food habit as many other bad habits. Even if you avoid foods occasionally laden with sugars and fats, such as cakes and fried dishes, fats and sugars can lurk in foods where you least expect them. Tortilla chips, noodles, muffins, croissants, and cream you splash in your coffee may be high in simple sugars and contain harmful fats. Sugar also shows us in flavored yogurt and condiments like salad dressings, mayonnaise, and ketchup. It's found in high quantities in some fat-free foods as it is used to substitute for fat. So everything has sugar in it. It makes things taste good, and so they're going to just put it in everything they can. And, you know, you're not going to be able to avoid that unless, you know, you're having a garden, you're making your own food. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard to get away from a lot of this. But that's why we have this scripture. Because they said it's hard. So Hebrews 12, 1-4. Wherefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which does easily beset us. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So that means some exercise. Looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such a contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. So basically, the things that we have to do every day are nothing. And they seem like a lot, but giving up a candy bar is nothing compared to what Christ had to go through and what other people have had to go through. We're just going through this really small thing that seems big, and it is big because, you know, Satan makes it big. So we got to pray, we have to fast, we have to exercise, even as it says, let's, you know, run the race that's set before us. So that means we need to exercise as well. That's something I think Adventists also forget. You know, we have this, let's eat vegan. But, you know, we've just like ignore all the other 8 laws, which is exercise and water and all those other things that are also equally important. And so we have to think about that. List of high glycemic sugar foods. High glycemic foods release their blood glucose too quickly and consensually produce changes in blood sugar instead of more stable blood sugar values like low glycemic foods. So this list is mostly going to be for a diabetic, something that they need to watch out for, not for someone who is not a diabetic. Now, even these foods, you need to think about that, you know, let's not eat too much of this, but still, this is for someone who's a diabetic. So don't freak out, because there's going to be a lot of stuff on here. You're going to be like, okay, what do you eat now? But this is for a diabetic. So, potato. So if you look at the glycemic index for a potato, it's actually higher than most sugar, like just regular sugar, it's higher. It's much more potent, basically. And so for someone with who's a diabetic, they're not going to be able to eat potatoes or not be able to eat lots of potatoes. It's going to have to be like a really small piece or something like that. But this is going to be too much for a diabetic to really eat because it's going to take their blood sugar level up too quickly. Rice. There's a myth about brown and white rice that, you can do brown rice, but it's the same thing. You still can't do brown rice if you're a diabetic. Carrots. Carrots are good, but if you're a diabetic, it's sweet. It has natural sweetener in it. And so especially something like carrot juice, you'd have to watch out for. This one is one that you're going to be really like, now what do we eat? Fruit. So fruit in general is sweet, and it's good. It's good for you, but for someone who's a diabetic, they're not going to be able to eat a lot of different fruits. Maybe kiwi, maybe strawberries, maybe. I don't know about that. Green apple, something like that, but a lot of the other ones, they're not going to be able to eat it because it's going to be too sweet. So you're going to have to revert to vegetables, and we should be doing that anyway. We should be having more vegetables, so this is also something you have to think about. So that's for someone if you're working with someone with diabetes or you have diabetes yourself. We are hypnotized with the acute physiological stress may cause the development of insulin resistance, which may risk the factor in developing type 2 diabetes. The present results indicate that physiological stress induced by IES can acutely alter hypnotic responses to insulin and affect the whole body and glucose metabolism. If you didn't understand any of that, that's fine. It just means that stress, they've done tests and they see that stress can cause diabetes. It could cause other insulin-resistant problems. But we knew that because the Bible said it a long time ago. Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. So we knew that already. But even if you look, I actually looked it up, stress also affects the bones and the bone strength. So that's extra bonus quiz, I guess. Milk could cause diabetes. So this is one that's going to deal with a lot with type 1 diabetes. A variant of beta-casein known as A1 beta-casein has been implicated in causing type 1 diabetes in genetically vulnerable children. A1 beta-casein may set off an immune response that later turns against the beta cells in the pancreas. Children who drink cow's milk have been found more likely to develop type 2 later on. So if you're, for young children who drink cow's milk, they might not be able to handle it because we're not meant to drink from another animal, so your body is not used to it. But specifically when you're younger, if your body is not fortified enough to be able to handle it, it could cause problems later on like type 1 diabetes. In fact, they did a test. In a current study by Dr. Joanna Parnin from the University of Helsinki, Finland, and their colleagues, studied infants with relatives who had diabetes. The authors analyzed the effect of immune system in relation to the exposure to cow's milk and family history of type 1 diabetes. So they got all these babies, and these babies had relatives that had diabetes. And they gave them cow's milk and gave them different formulas to see what would happen. I don't know how their parents agreed to that one, but hey, all the infants included in the study had a first-degree relative with type 2 diabetes and therefore were at an increased genetic risk for developing the disease. The results show that infants at 3 months of age, infants who had been fed cow's milk had a significantly higher immune response to bovine insulin than did infants who received the other form that were breastfed. The authors reported the group showed no differences. However, in the reactivity to the human insulin at that age, our observations raised the issue whether oral exposure to foreign insulin plays a role in autoimmune process leading to type 1 diabetes. Dr. Parnin and colleagues wrote it could be that some predisposed children, early exposure to cow's milk can trigger an immune reaction to insulin. The initiation of insulin-specific T cells by dietary insulin in the gut immune system may carry a risk for an autoimmune process progressing ultimately to clinical type 1 diabetes, they concluded. So they gave them these formulas and stuff, and it caused some type of immune response. As we mentioned, the immune response could lead to the immune system attacking itself, which could lead to type 1 diabetes. So they're saying genetically vulnerable children can get diabetes from drinking cow's milk at a young age, basically. Okay, so let's move on to the last section, reversing the condition. Parents should awaken their children to their interest in the study of physiology. Youth need to be instructed in regard to their bodies. There are but few among the young who have any definite knowledge of the mysteries of life. So I'm not talking to everyone here is not necessarily a youth, but youth in spirit, that's fine. So this is an admission of we need to understand what's going on with us. We need to be able to understand how this works and why this happens, so that way when something happens, like we get some symptom, we'll be like, okay, I know what's happening. Let me do this and this. So nothing can catch you off guard. So many people with diabetes find the best way to control their intake of harmful fats and sugars is to become an educated consumer. This includes learning how to read nutrition labels, to spot harmful fats and sugars. It also includes cooking more at home to control ingredients. You control your blood sugar level and diabetes by eating foods that are low in sodium, foods that are low in saturated and trans fat. Whole unprocessed carbs such as vegetables, fruits, and whole high fiber grains is a managed amount of carbohydrates and adequate amount of protein. You can also keep a food journal to know when you eat and how much. This will help you see if you're stress eating, if you have any other bad eating habits, if you eat a particular junk food often. So this one's not necessary, but it can give you a sense of control. Because with someone with diabetes or any disease, something happens and you just you would freak out. You don't want that. You want to have a control. You want to be able to be, okay, this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling now. This is why, oh, okay, I see. You have some control, which is good. And that plays into the educated consumer thing, that we need to be able to understand what's going on with us so that we can be able to have control and so nothing can catch us off guard. And this is also for someone who is working with someone with diabetes. Have some knowledge of what's going on, have some knowledge of the human body, and just, so you can gauge a situation. In the morning, stick with whole high fiber buds, red, which are lower in calories and fat. Plenty of salads. Choose healthy fat options such as nuts, seeds, avocado, peppers, onions, broccoli, cauliflower, celery, as well as greens. If you're eating pizza, choose whole wheat thin crust and veggie toppings. So don't make food boring. If you're working with someone with diabetes, they just can't eat salads every day. You're not going to be able to hold them with that. You have to make food interesting. So they say pizza, but you could make something else as well. But just make food interesting, still be able to be creative, because you're going to have to cook at home more now, so you got to teach them how to do that as well. But you still have to make food something appealing so they won't just give up. Effects of garlic. A new study has found that consuming garlic can reduce the levels of blood sugar in people suffering type 2 diabetes, as well as offering other benefits in treatment and the metabolic condition. Scientists found that moderate amounts of garlic supplements could offer benefits to diabetes patients, and that raw or cooked garlic or aged garlic extract can help to rejuvenate blood glucose and potentially lower the effects of some diabetes complications, as well as fighting infections, reducing bad cholesterol, and aiding blood flow. Time to eat better. Eat whole grains, especially buckwheat, millet, raw vegetables, citrus fruit are beneficial. Eat large salads 2 times daily. Eat 85% raw diet daily. So this is, as I said, you're going to start having to cook at home because you're not going to be able to do this if you eat anything from the store. It's just not going to work. Remedies. Okay, so this is some of the remedies you can take. L-arginine. Take about dosages 2 to 3 grams 3 times a day. Arginine is an amino acid and it is available in most health food stores. It's a nutritional supplement. In 2007 study, it was found that regular use of arginine in laboratory animals was able to stimulate the pancreas to produce beta cells, the special kind of pancreatic cells which produce insulin. So before they said that it was an impossibility for anything to basically get the beta cells working again. But they gave them this, and it does work, and it did do that very thing, what they said, which was impossible. Golden seal. Golden seal is an herb which has a long history of medical use both in East and West. Modern science believes that part of its value as a treatment and lies in the fact that it contains berberine, a bioactive compound. Berberine has been shown in studies on laboratory animals, like arginine, stimulate the production of pancreatic beta cells, which the body needs to make insulin. So this is another herb you can use if you're working with someone, and it will stimulate the beta cells to create insulin. Stevia. This is a natural sweetener also. Stevia take 1 teaspoon 2 times daily. The naturally sweet plant, now widely used as a sugar substitute, is a good choice for diabetics for other reasons than avoiding a lot of simple carbohydrates. It contains compounds which have been shown to rejuvenate pancreatic beta cells that have been damaged. Its actions are similar to an anti-diabetic drug called glibenclamide, but without unwanted side effects. So this is another good herb you could use. People use it for sweeteners as well, because it doesn't take up your blood sugar. You could put it in something, and it'll taste sweet, but it won't take up your blood sugar. It won't affect anything. But you got to be careful on like the usage, because some people say it gives them a bad taste if you use too much of it, but it's a bit okay to me. Red clover, drink 2 cups daily. Red clover is traditionally thought of as a woman's herb because of its hormone balancing properties, but it's great for type 2 diabetics as well. This is due to one of its active compounds, a substance called ginseng, which has been proven to help stimulate beta cells proliferation in the pancreas. Fig leaves. Make tea out of the leaves, drink 3 cups daily. Fig leaves contain compounds which have currently not been insulated but are believed to have an anti-diabetic effect. Diabetics who take supplements made from fig leaves do not need as much insulin as those who don't. The substances discussed above offer hope for a treatment for type 2 diabetes that is natural and does not rely on synthetic insulin, whether from injections or a pump. These natural treatments could make a huge difference to young type 1 diabetics and allow them to have a kind of normal childhood which is difficult or impossible to have with the current mainstream treatments. So something like this might be beneficial for someone young, so they don't have to do like the pumps, the shots, and all this stuff. They could have something alternative. Remember to check your blood sugar before each meal, so that's also important. Okay, so this is our last thing. Who is the sweet killer? Because I mentioned at the beginning of this that the title is Defeat the Sweet Killer. So we're going to have to uncover who the sweet killer is, because that's going to be pretty central. So let's look at the definition of disease. The only hope for better things is in education of people in right principles. Let physicians teach people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. Disease is the effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from the violations of the laws of health. In cases of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Healthful conditions should be changed, wrong habits corrected. Then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. So the definition of disease is the effort of the body to cure itself because of the violations of the laws of health. So the body is trying to throw off an impurity or something. So what causes diabetes in the first place? Let's backtrack. What caused it? Okay, so lifestyle. So you ate something, maybe something you shouldn't, maybe too much of it, and now your body is no longer able to assimilate the glucose. And so it throws off this glucose into the bloodstream to try to get rid of it. It tries to pee it out, it tries to do other things to try to get rid of it. So those cause symptoms that you don't like, but the body is trying to fix itself because it's trying to get rid of all this excess sugar now that is been stored. So it's not actually anything bad, it's trying to fix you. So that means that it's not the problem and it's not the sweet killer because it's trying to fix the problem. So then who is the sweet killer? Well, so the sweet killer is none other than, drum roll, ourselves, because you're the one who decided to make the bad choices. You're the one who decided to put the candy bar to your mouth and do the different things that you know you shouldn't, not exercising, et cetera, et cetera. So we all make those bad choices. So we can't blame anything else. It's us that are the problem, and we kill ourselves. So Matthew 10:36, and a man's foes shall be they of his own household. You could count that of ourselves as well, because we're part of that household. So we can be our own foe. Now, this is another scripture that you might not have known had anything to do with health, but it's actually the whole context of it. So let's read it really quick. This will be the last scripture. Philippians 4:11-13. Not that I have speak in want of respect of want, for I have learned in whatever state I am, therefore, to be content. I know both to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. So Paul is saying that he can basically be temperate. He can, he knows when he needs this, he knows when he needs that. When he doesn't need it, he knows how to just be content. And if he can't get it, he's just going to be content with that. He's not going to worry about it. He'll be temperate and have a balanced outlook. But notice the next scripture after that. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. So, that was the context of this was actually about health, and we might not have noticed it. I didn't either. But so we have to think about those things, that I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me. Through this, a lot of hard stuff you're going to have to do. Changing how you eat, changing where you eat, what you eat, all of it. How you exercise, how you don't exercise. Everything is going to be changed, a complete lifestyle change, and that's going to be hard. But as Paul said, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. So that should be something that motivates us to make better choices. Amen. Thank you, and I'll have a word of prayer, and I'll give it back over to my dad. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you this Sabbath day, be with us and direct us, that we can make the choices that you want us to make, and that you will give us the power to do those choices, that we might have healthier bodies and minds. In Jesus' name, amen.